Everybody, this is just a quick video showing you who's going at each position in these rookie mock drafts. If you think you know who's going to go at this position, leave a comment down below. Who do you think it's going to be? And see if any of my guests who've been on agree with you. And before we get into it, hey, hit that like, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe. We're on a march towards, 500 subscribers. I'd love to be able to do it before we get into this season of football. That'd be awesome. So help me out and let's go. Let's see who's going at this draft pick, shall we? One there, the new weapon over at Atlanta. And let's have a look at 1-2 then. And there's a couple of names here, right? There's no real like set in stone 1-2 at the minute, I don't think. So who's your guy at 1-2?
So I thought the reason why we're not doing multiple rounds here is because I spent so much time really playing around and really testing my thoughts and like sitting there and staring at some of these picks. Like I think the next 3 picks in your Superflex rookie drafts are incredibly difficult. And now, are you going to say make the wrong choice? No, because I think there are 3 really solid. Actually, I think there are 4. Well, let's say 3 solid options here. And so I guess that's one way to look at it. I guess you don't have to sweat it too much because there are 3 great options here. But I do think I understand why you're going to sit here and sweat it out here. And so to me, I made a last minute decision here, like a half an hour before the show started. I really was, I'm going Jahmyr Gibbs at 102 over quarterbacks, over anyone, because what was really holding me back about Jahmyr Gibbs was touchdowns. I think to reach your true elite ceiling as a running back for fantasy, you have to score touchdowns. And Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't an elite touchdown scorer. Now, he still had a decent amount of touchdowns. I think his high was 8, or I can't remember off the top of my head here, 8 rushing touchdowns. But he also had I think it was 5 receiving touchdowns. So it's still like overall scrimmage touchdowns was solid, but CMC and then had a lot more. And I think that was a separator. And then especially when you look at the percentage of your college offense, as far as touchdowns, Jahmyr Gibbs kind of pales in comparison. But if we're going to get behind Jahmyr Gibbs as a prospect, we're going to say that he is truly one of these prospects that you can be excited about because of his ability. He is an incredible receiver, probably one of the best receivers at the running back position. And then to get the draft capital, and it's not like, hey, here's my second piece of advice: draft capital matters, but it is not the only thing. So, or else why not just pull up the draft order and then just draft off of that? Because that's not. One, that's not very fun. And 2, your NFL teams get it wrong too. So what draft capital really is, it's a reflection, especially for running backs. It's not necessarily a reflection of skill. It's a reflection of opportunity and or perceived opportunity that the team's going to be giving him. And, they're saying that we were tempted to take him at 106. And, some of that is puff and whatever, but to get a 112 and this kind of profile at 112 into this kind of offense is exciting. The touchdowns scare me a little bit. The volume floor makes me a little nervous, but the speed, the receiving ability, and that perceived opportunity in this kind of offense with a quarterback who loves to dump it off to running backs, I'm pretty excited about Jahmyr Gibbs here. And I'm going to swing for, like, people want to talk about, hey, Anthony Richardson, his upside. If we want to swing for upside, Jahmyr Gibbs' receiving ability, and in this offense, that's what I call upside. So I'm going to have him as my 102. And I'm actually a little out of my comfort zone doing that, but I'm here on the hot seat giving you a hot take. I wouldn't say a hot take, but I'm really pushing that idea of what upside really means. And for me, it's Jahmyr Gibbs at 102.
Yeah, absolutely. And like a big thing that maybe isn't like getting mentioned a lot is like people were saying about like Bijan Robinson, like how far is he going to slip? Is he going to slip down to like pick number 20 or something like that? And like people were like, that'd be good if he got like that kind of draft capital. It's like Jahmyr Gibbs got better draft capital than what we thought Bijan Robinson might have got. Like, so that's got to be a huge like tick for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I just think, if everything goes to plan, the only thing I'm kind of worried about is like DeAndre Swift, right? Obviously, similar-ish player, maybe not as fast, but good receiving back. If things didn't work out for him there, are you like a bit nervous then for Jahmyr Gibbs?
Hey, the thing with Love is once what you get, you get burned once, you gotta get back on the horse and do it all over again,
Yeah.
right? No. But in all seriousness, though, the question is legitimate, and that is part of my thought process. Like, hey, I really like DeAndre Swift. He's my highest, like out of as Brees Hall's my number one as far as these blue chip pieces are concerned, and then it's DeAndre Swift at 33% rostership. So, yeah, I've felt the pain of DeAndre Swift, but so has the Lions, the organization, who has not been happy with him, but then they are ready to go they're a significant more draft capital invested in Jahmyr Gibbs than DeAndre Swift, especially with the amount of running backs available to, like, we were talking about the amount of volume as far as running backs are concerned. So that should decrease the supply or the demand. And they still did it. And I'm just like, you know what? I gotta follow what I care about. And yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, DeAndre Swift, as good as he is not what DeAndre Swift, what he is as a receiver. He's not the same level as receiver as Jahmyr Gibbs is. Agreed. Because he doesn't have quite the speed either.
Yeah. No, agreed, definitely. So that's Jahmyr Gibbs locked in at 102. Let's go on a 1-2 and see who you're thinking. Are you going now? It is super flex. Are you thinking it has to be a quarterback here, or I've seen Jahmyr Gibbs go 1-2 in some places as well.
Yeah, you're right. I've seen him go 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, breaking up this band of quarterbacks. But for me, as I mentioned with my tiers, I've got all three of these quarterbacks in the same tier. So this is maybe one of those situations where if I own the 102 and I maybe a rebuilding team, maybe I can look to move back a couple of spots, get a bit more value and still look in a quarterback, because I feel like these quarterbacks all offer different kinds of value. I think it depends on your roster construction, what situation you are in Dynasty. Maybe pushes you more towards one player than the other, but just in a vacuum, and who I think should be the 101. I mean, I'm glad we're doing the show after the draft, because before the draft it wouldn't be this guy, but after the draft it's got to be Anthony Richardson for me as the 102. My big concern with Richardson was maybe him sliding a little bit in the draft. Now, I'm not saying I thought he could be like a Malik Willis that was going to slide to day 2, but I did just worry that maybe he could go down to I don't know, like the 12th pick, the 13th pick, and just slide a little bit out of that top 10, that top 5. But the fact that he got picked in the 4th overall pick, going to the Colts as well, which felt like a dream landing spot. We know that the new head coach that they've got over there, he's worked with guys like Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert and what they've been able to offer us in fantasy. So I feel like this is just the ideal fit for Anthony Richardson, going to the Colts. I feel like he could get a chance to start quite early as well, because obviously it's just Gardner Minshew there holding down the fort, and I feel like he's not the quarterback that I think a lot of people in fantasy maybe fall in love with. Obviously, he's a bit of a character, but I feel like Anthony Richardson, they've obviously invested a lot of draft capital in him. I don't think it's going to be that kind of situation with a Trey Lance where he was behind Jimmy Garoppolo. I feel like the difference in quarterbacks that they're going to be behind is so different, and I feel like they maybe want to see what they've got straight away in Richardson. So the fact that he's going to start early, we know the ceiling, obviously with the rushing upside that everybody talks about, how he absolutely dominated that combine. For fantasy, the ceiling is incredible for Anthony Richardson. And as I say, in a vacuum, picking out of all these quarterbacks, I'm shooting for that upside and what he offers.
Yeah, the more I kind of listen and see other people and be part of different mock drafts, this seems to be Anthony Richardson is borderline like breaking away on a tier in his own now, actually, because he ended up so high. And then people seeing what like Justin Fields did last year. Justin Fields barely threw the ball and finishes quarterback 6, 7. And like, if Justin Fields could do that, Anthony Richardson offers quite a lot more rushing the ball than Justin Fields does, at least what we've seen in college. So who knows what he'd be able to do. So yeah, I love the pick of Anthony Richardson.
And I think it was just interesting as well, with before the draft, everyone was saying about the floor was potentially risky, and then a lot of people were correct in saying actually the floor is pretty high with Richardson, because as you mentioned with like a Justin Fields. But for me, whenever I said the floor is low, it was more about him when he's not on the field. You know what I mean? It's like how long it could take. The floor could be 0 points in next year's season if he doesn't see the field. So the floor is actually pretty low. But in terms of when he's on the field, the floor is there, the ceiling is there. But for me, before the draft, it was just that worry that, well, he might sit year 1 and then we could be in that Trey Lance situation where he might not get the opportunity, he might not impress, and it might not turn out the way we hope it does. So for me, that was my argument with the floor, and I just wanted to say why. If anyone ever did see me say, well, the floor's a bit risky with Richardson, it's more that I wasn't 100% sure that he was going to see the field early. But I mean, with the spot he's got, the draft capital he's got, he's starting. So the floor's great for fantasy. The ceiling's great. What's not to love?
Yeah, the floor, it's kind of hard to describe the floor with him. It's almost like it's like it's a trapdoor, right? It's like everything's fine until like someone pushes that button and then everything's gone, right? So it's really interesting with him and what he's going to do. But I've got my fingers crossed for Anthony Richardson. I hope he does well. So who's following him up then at 1-2?
Yeah, so this is a guy who I pre-draft, he was my quarterback 2, but he's moved up to quarterback 1. It's Anthony Richardson. Yeah. Sticking with the chalk at the minute, just because, I mean, my worry with Richardson was where he was he going to slide in the NFL draft? The Indianapolis Colts was always going to be the perfect landing spot for him with Shane Steichen. What he done with Jalen Hurts. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Jalen Hurts, but the floor is just there with Anthony Richardson. I think we're going to see a pretty similar season to what Justin Fields was last year. Perhaps not quite to that level, but it's going to be pretty similar. There's going to be some Russian concepts in there. His floor is just so safe. I think he's locked in with that because of that Russian ability, that athletic ability he's got. For 2 to 3 years, his value, even if he doesn't show, doesn't reach his potential, is still going to be top 10, top 12, where if it doesn't work out after year 1 or year 2, you could probably still move off him and not lose any value on the pick. So I'm really excited to see what he does in this Colts offense. So for me, it has to be Richardson at 2, just because of that ceiling is extremely high.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he seems to be fairly consensus now at 2. So sort of slowly like moving up everyone's board to 2 overall. Who is the second person off your board?
Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
And weirdly, as I was saying, we've done loads. There's been loads of drafts for him in the last couple of days. And I think 2 drafts I've walked away with Bijan and Anthony Richardson. So I don't know if that's me admitting that I did really bad in these dynasties last year, or the fact that I've just sold everything and just gone, I want these guys on. And the potential upside, if you've got both of them, is incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, there's huge like points. If both of these guys hit, I mean, that is a huge game changer, especially in Superflex. You've got, I mean, if Anthony Richardson, hits, he's not going to like hit in the same way that like Daniel Jones has been like a hit. He's going to be smash hit, number 1 player overall hit if he hits. Like, he's got real potential. There is a chance in, 10 years' time, so many people are like, God damn it, I wish I took Anthony Richardson at 1, not Bijan Robinson. There's a chance that could be a possibility, right?
I was about to say, I'd rather, if I was trading up to get one of these guys, I'd rather trade up and get Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, because you can get that deal done.
Yeah, I feel like I could get that trade done and have, I do agree that Anthony Richardson has this massive ceiling, but I also think he has a really low floor. Like, he can be, I've heard, I know Murph came on our show and said that he's not a good QB and everything like this.
Yeah.
On the Rewind show, and he's not a QB. And I know, he has that Konami side to him as a rusher and stuff like that. If he's used in the right way, great. But if he's used in the wrong way, he could be a flop. Like, I'm not sitting here. Twitter don't annihilate me for saying he's a flop. I'm not sitting here saying he's a flop. I'm saying he has the potential to flop. But I'd rather be holding him and him flop than not holding him and he hits the ceiling he could hit.
Yeah, exactly. Paul loves to hold floppies, right? Right, so let's move on. I mean, it's got to be QB here, and it's very similar to obviously whenever you were on the show not that long ago at all. It's Anthony Richardson, because I'm not messing around, Paul. I'm trying to win, okay? And if I'm going to win, Anthony Richardson is a surefire way of doing it. And guess what? If I'm not winning, I want to be last. I don't want to be in the middle. And Anthony Richardson's a surefire way of coming last as well. So you're either going to win or you're going to try again next year. I think he's the only guy you can take here, because if he doesn't do well, you got a hell of a good pick next year anyway. If he does do well, you might win. So I think he's there because he has like huge, huge, huge ceiling. His floor is hard to describe because I actually don't think that he has, in terms of points being scored, I don't think that he has a particularly low floor, but what he does have is low potential longevity, if that makes any sense. So he's going to rush enough that his floor is going to be okay, kind of like Justin Fields. Justin Fields was very, very good for fantasy last year, but make no mistake about it, I bet the Bears are not that happy with Justin Fields because they were the worst team in the NFL last year. And if they're the worst team in the NFL again this year, Justin Fields isn't going to be the quarterback for very long. Doesn't matter how many fantasy points he scores. So it could be the same thing with Anthony Richardson. He might score a lot of fantasy points, but if the Colts don't do well, they're happy to turn the page, and teams are doing it quicker and quicker and quicker. They're turning the page in these quarterbacks real fast. Now, look at Zach Wilson, number 2 overall pick. Dead now, gone, buried. And obviously, he made some interesting decisions along the way. Some of the things he said, not advisable. But teams will quickly move along from these guys if they're not happy with them. So while Richardson does have that high ceiling, high floor for fantasy points, it's that longevity is the thing I'm worried about the most.
Yeah, I completely agree. We've this has been part of the conversation with Lamar Jackson as well, isn't it? And it's, you know, when he got his MVP, he rushed for something like 1,100 yards that season. And, you know, there was always this talk of how long is he going to play? You know, you can't see Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson, Jalen Hurts. You can't see any of these players doing what Tom Brady's done. I know nobody does what Tom Brady does, and it's quite rare, but, you know, Pat Mahomes, you could see still throwing the ball in 10 years' time. Can you see Lamar Jackson rushing the ball in 10 years' time the way that he is? You can't see it, you know? These running backs have a short shelf life for that exact same reason, you know? They're required to rush so much that it does take an effect on them, you know? I was only not that long ago, and I picked these two guys, so it's I've got no disagreement with what you've done so far.